Okay, good morning, everyone. And today is going to be a very busy day. Thanks for joining us early. With me is Glib. And oh,
Hello.
hi, how's it going, Glib?
Good. Very good. Off to a good start, I think.
Yes. So today and yesterday, lots of news about The Last of Us Part 2. And I think this video is actually very good. And it's a very positive video. And hopefully, we're going to see Neil Druckmann in a different light, in a more professional light, as a creator, as a game developer, a very passionate man, a very educated man. And he knows what he's doing, at least from a technical perspective. And that's what we can all appreciate, whether you or not you agree with the subject matter of a movie or a game. You can appreciate how it comes together and the philosophy behind that. And that's something that I can respect. I went to school for it, never got in the industry. And with this video, there's also a lot of talk about the medium and how important that is to using certain techniques found in cinema in video games as well. And I think Glib is going to have a great insight. If you don't know Glib, he's in the industry. He knows movies. He knows how videos are made. So
Yeah.
very helpful commentary. So yeah, we're not bashing on anyone right now. That'll come later in the day, I'm sure. But this is going to be a great video if you haven't seen it already. And this is from Lessons from the Screenplay. And this is an interview they did specifically with Druckmann. So there's lots of great feedback. All right, let's get going.
Hi, my name is Neil Druckmann, and I was the writer and creative director of The Last of Us, and this is Lessons from the Screenplay.
Many people don't equate video games with storytelling. They might think they're simply about button mashing or blowing things up. But video games can tell deeply emotional stories with rich character arcs that you don't simply watch unfold, you participate in. The 2013 game The Last of Us from developer Naughty Dog is one of the very best examples of how to tell a story through the medium of a video game.
Do you think that's true?
I agree. This is a very generic way of introducing what a video game is, and that's fine. This guy he's a gamer as well as a video guy, so he's in both worlds. But I have not played the first game, so I can't comment on how good the quality is. But the technique and the ideas behind it are solid. The problem I have is going to be with cutscenes, and we're gonna get into that later because there's lots of great games that don't even think about using cutscenes that are just as effective, if not more effective. So
I hear I hear a lot from people that Last of Us is an exemplar narrative-based game, and I think that that might be true, but I would love to hear reasons why, not just the generic, oh, it's so beautiful to look at. Like, yeah, I can see that it's beautiful to look at, but was it what part of the writing, what part of the storytelling and the presentation is, aside from the visuals and the sound, is really connecting with people? Is it the ideas? Is it the dialogue? Because when I played the game, I I was above average as an experience, but I didn't feel like it was exceptional in any of the areas where people were stating it was exceptional, aside from the visuals and sound, like I said. And I know that's kind of a hot take for people.
I like to compare it to Metal Gear Solid because I know Hideo Kojima is a big movie buff, and all the cutscenes in that game, the technology wasn't there. This is the PlayStation 1. The technology was not there to have fully rigged facial models. So you had these very blank faces, I mean, literally a mannequin face, and conveying emotion through the actors, which is sort of not even half the job. Because when you want actors, you want to see the face. You need to see the face. So
Right.
when you don't have full motion, when you don't have in-game cutscenes, you're using these in-game whatever live action cutscenes. It's sort of like, okay, without the voice acting, this would be pointless. And if you turn the volume off, it's like, okay, why don't I just read dialogue? So he wanted to have those camera angles with those action scenes that you couldn't perform in the game, and that's the disconnect we get from video game and story. So or
I would also
cutscenes.
add in, I would add, there are events that are in between cutscenes and free-form gameplay, like the quick time events. And to me, I always felt that compromise was less than optimal. And I would much rather not have them. So I'm wondering if that is something that people are. I wonder if that's like an argument, like the validity of QuickTime events, because I know people have had various opinions on it. But in the second game, there are a lot of scenes where I expected QuickTime events, but then there weren't any. They were just cutscenes, which made me wonder if it's the cinematic intention to have that QuickTime event, and they don't have a way to add that emotion into the game through the normal gameplay that's available, because you might be, you might be too competent or something.
QuickTime events are always I always go back to like something like the God of War games or Telltale games. Like it's sort of like sometimes it works, but it's used so much in those games. It's like, okay, is this just a button mashing game now? Is this the best way of interacting? In some cases, I get it because there's branching paths, which is great. But in most cases, you're just like when Kratos kills someone, he's button mashing and you're ripping his jaw off or something. So it's kind of like, all right, this could have been done in gameplay. Like you don't have to do it this way. So I never liked those kinds of games just because of the QuickTime events. However, in a story-focused narrative like Telltale games, you need something. You can't just be reading a book on screen. So the cutscenes are the game itself. So here's a super chat from Austin Unruh. Wouldn't say that I was exceptional. It was exceptional in the story, but it's pretty darn good, which is rare nowadays. I think you're referring to the cutscenes themselves, not the story.
I think he was talking about the Last of Us 1,
right?
In general, yeah. I see. I'm hit or miss about it because I find Deus Ex to be really interesting. Not visually, it's not competent at all anymore. It's hard to look at, but the story concepts are really good, and I think more interesting than even the sequels, which have better presentation. So judging games by stories is difficult for me because there's so many different ways of interacting with the story. Some games are like a story for a real-time strategy game. I wouldn't expect to be very emotional because you're disconnected from the way that the camera. But then a first-person game, there's all sorts of opportunities to get right in your face. So I can see that there's limitations in presentation of the gameplay. And I'm wondering if it's just because it's a third-person game with cutscenes, and that impact that it has on people makes it so that that is more memorable, or because I know people like the characters. Obviously, that's a huge bonus to it, and some of the story elements are pretty shocking and emotive. But I'm wondering if the same emotions would exist if it were not the type of game that it was. Like if it were an RPG. Because people can get invested in those too.
I would look at, again, KOTOR and Mass Effect for starting off the whole talking Paul Ekman or Dr. Paul Ekman heads with all the full articulation. You identify with that a heck of a lot more, of course. And that's just the more attractive version. To me, it's all about, are you attracted to this character? And can you identify with what's going in their head? And
I think that's good enough in that sense then, yeah.
Sure. And good morning, Dunn. How you doing, sir? Just happy to see you.
I'm doing okay. I just got finished with work, and I'm just turning my computer on so I can join the watch together.
All right. Okay. We are at 36 seconds, so we'll wait around for you. But yeah, it is an interesting discussion to say how much of a movie should be in your video game, and once you do that, how should it be done? Because we've seen cutscenes in games before we had 3D, before we had camera angles and various stuff you can do with the camera that you can do in movies nowadays. And there's great stories back in the day, in the 90s, the golden age of Super Nintendo with all the JRPGs that were coming out several times a year.
Yes.
They had great stories. And some of those stories were presented with one dialogue box on the screen that wasn't scrolling. It was just, here's a person, they said something. Here's another person, they reply. And they just keep going. So you can identify with characters based off what they are as characters, not necessarily how attractive they are visually. So, especially when you're working with 4 centimeters or 6 centimeters of a character sprite, which you can't really articulate too much emotion aside from how they stand, how standoffish they might appear, how violent they might appear. Couldn't do much with emotion, but you can do with how they walk, the style of talk, the grammar they use, the little details that make a character, without having to resort to getting a full motion body rig, doing motion capture, cleaning that all up, just to get like a guy to walk over across the room or something like that. So, Dunn, where are you, sir?
Oh, I'm still here. Yeah, I believe I'm really tired. I've been up all night.
All right. Well, I see you in the watch together, so I assume you're ready to go.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah. It is currently loading up, and it's at you're at 36 seconds.
You got it.
Mhm.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Alrighty.
In The Last of Us, you play as
cool.
a character
I'm
named
in.
Joel, a smuggler who has to escort a teenage girl, Ellie, across a post-apocalyptic United States. And although the experience of playing a game is different than watching a film, the writers crafting the story face many of the same challenges.
Writing dialogue on the page is one of the last things and one of the easiest things you do. A lot of the hard writing is structure. What are the beats that need to happen? How is each beat unique? How is it all working towards this ultimate message you're trying to say?
I pretty much agree. I mean, there's details I would argue with, but that's fine. I agree.
Yeah, sure. But it's funny to think about that with what he just came out with.
It's okay if you focus on structure. I always say a lot. Structure and style are very similar. So when you say one, you also imply the other. If you in the inverse is exactly true as well. So whether you plan it out through content or plan it out through structure, you're doing the same thing at the end. I'm just curious what he meant by story beats, because that can be many things to many people.
To
You
me,
have that.
sorry, I was just going to say,
Yeah, go ahead.
because I'm eating a bigot.
Yeah. Okay.
The story beats for a lot of the games that he's been involved in are set pieces or sequences that are set pieces because they're broken down into gameplay sequences. So I think he breaks it up by, I think his story beat is an emotional turn. And Last of Us 2 is like the most obvious version of that. Like the character has to go here so that Joel can get caught by these guys and get hit with the golf club. That's a beat. Now, I don't know if it was different before, but with Uncharted, it was always like, what's the part of the puzzle that is going to be unlocked here? We're going to go to the museum and find the hidden key inside the private collection, and then that'll have some big set piece that falls over and the police show up or whatever. And then all those beats together make up the story with the overarching message. With The Last of Us 2, he's saying, revenge is bad. That's what everything leads up to. So to me, I really feel like we're seeing a very transparent version of this thing that he's outlining here in his newest production.
Right.
Not very fluffy. There's not a lot of there's nothing more, it feels like, than what he's describing so far.
It's very surface level.
Yeah, that's
Very
why I pretty
mechanical.
much agree. It's like, oh, you're right. Yeah, this is totally fine.
Then you kind of dive in deeper and say, okay, what are the tools we have? How do we make these interactive moments tell the story more so than the dialogue?
As a longtime gamer, I've always been fascinated by the unique experiences created by video games, and I wanted to know how to create a compelling narrative in this different medium. So I sat down with writer and creative director Neil Druckmann, who was nice enough to answer all of my questions. So today we're going to look at the differences and similarities between storytelling in film and storytelling in games. To explore the techniques used to convey exposition, establish character arcs, and teach gameplay in an emotional way. And to examine the way a game can make the player truly experience a story.
I always have a problem with these big statements like, it truly experiences a story. It's like, all right, fine.
Yeah, I kind of my brain kind of trailed off there. I was like just thinking about how he kind of looks like George Clooney a little bit. Couldn't think of anything else.
Fair enough. Yeah, there's so many weird things that kind of come into play when you say the true ending. It's like, okay, moving on. And that's just, I'll go for it.
Kind of reminds me of Harrison Ford nowadays, but yeah.
Yeah, poor guy. Poor guy. Debasing himself to be in Rise of Skywalker.
Making money.
Hence, debasing
The
himself.
Last of Us. Cool. So why don't we just start with what are some of the differences in telling a story in a movie versus telling a story in a video game?
In the movie, it's so much about shots and how do you tell the story visually on the screen. Games are interesting is that you could have that, right? You have cinematics which operate like film, and so you need to be very familiar with the cinematic language. Then there is another layer of it, which is, of course, the thing that makes games unique is the interactive space.
The fundamental difference between how the audience experiences a story in a video game versus a film is that a filmgoer is passive, whereas the player has agency. In film, you watch characters and empathize by observing their situation, their desires, their obstacles, their choices. This is true for video games as well, but there's also a more direct connection. You develop empathy through control.
When you're playing a character, you connect with them in this very subconscious level. I don't even know how to articulate it, but you hear people say, I am Joel, or that part when they're finally playing as Ellie. This is totally unique to gaming, and we watch this over and over again as focus testers get to that part and like, oh my God, I'm Ellie.
And this is a very important thing in The Last of Us 2. When you play as Abby, you are now the murderer of yourself or your father figure. And
why do you want to do that?
This is one of the things I can't comprehend. Why would anyone want to give people that option? It doesn't make sense. You just killed your dad. You just killed, or a father figure who is you. Now you get to learn about their background. It's like, I don't want to. I hate this person. So you have to really sell the audience. And it wasn't set up properly. I saw the first 3 hours. It's not set up. They don't demonize Joel enough. They don't give Abby a good enough backstory before you get to play as her. Even when you play as her, it's not enough. So
they do a really good job of this with Dishonored, where you get to play as the villain.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In one of the DLC expansions, you play as this guy named Dowd, who's in charge of these. It's like the opposing version of the main character that has similar powers, and you get to empathize with him and his struggles by being him. Empathy through control, which is really perspective in this. But the thing is that the two narratives cross, but are separate. In this game, the plot line for the hero character ends and is replaced. Dowd is not a replacement. It's just another expansion, because they understand that there is a connection between the character and the audience, and the meta connection between the audience and the actual content. Why do they still want to? Why would anybody want a Last of Us 3? What's holding them?
You would be Abby. Like, that's the only logical.
Yeah, or Ellie, and she changes her mind, or she goes and does something else. Or what if he throws an even bigger curveball where you play as Abby and you're you're trying to get rid of Ellie or something like that again.
You'd be Lev. You'd be the transsexual sidekick.
There's just nothing left.
It just seems as though this is just not a good. It's basically like if I guess a good example might be if so after the Red Wedding, the Tywin Lannister became the main character of Game of Thrones for the next couple of seasons.
It could, these things can be done in writing. There's so much setup you have to put together.
Yes. Yeah, and definitely if Tywin Lannister were to be the main character, say if the showrunners completely just threw out the books early and didn't have Tywin die on the toilet, and just made him the main character, it would have worked, I think, if they had continued to write him well. But I don't think that would have happened.
Yeah, so all the things we're saying, like killing off a protagonist, this is like a rule-breaking thing. Or switching the perspective. Like, I've read plenty of stories where you see the perspective of the antagonist, and you get inside their head, and that's beautiful. I like that. But
Yeah.
to do that, you have to know if you want to kill a protagonist or replace a protagonist. It's like rebuilding something from whole cloth again, and you're telling a second story in your first story. It's a lot of effort.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that George R. R. Martin is able to get away from it is that not only Ned is the POV. There are so many more POV characters that have continuing stories that are not resolved by the end of Game of Thrones.
Which is one of the problems of that whole series of books, because he has to create all these characters, and there's so many, and you don't remember them all, and you're reading so many character plots interact, and you're like, who is this guy again? What is he doing? And then you lose track of who they are, and they get bigger and better, and there's like I can't remember their names, but there's this pirate guy who has all these magical artifacts, and it's just like, okay.
Euron Greyjoy.
Euron.
Yeah.
It's insane. He has all this stuff writing on him, and you're like, oh my God, how are you going to resolve that?
Yeah. I think that Robert Jordan kind of suffers from a relatively similar problem. He has a much smaller cast and fewer viewpoint characters, but he has like lots and lots of side characters. Admittedly, they allow him to kill off a lot of people, but he still has a relatively large main cast that gets spread over this whole world. And but you do have more books. You got like 14 Game of Thrones length books.
The issue
do this. But
the issue is ensemble cast versus post-apocalyptic cast of just like two people.
Yeah.
The only people that really matter to fans going into The Last of Us 2 are Joel and Ellie. Everybody else is sort of, they can just get killed. It doesn't really matter.
Well,
so
when people get shot in the head and they're still okay and without any facial scarring, it's just like, okay.
This is ridiculous.
Naughty Dog, what is going on?
Yeah. That's just utterly dumb.
It's just the wrong game to play around the concept of multiple perspectives on good and evil when nobody seems to be able to just have a normal conversation in this universe anymore. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Well, because I don't know. Because they're emotions. Because I'm feeling angry right now. There's like scenes where people stab or shoot each other where just make no sense. Because they're that angry, but the anger isn't really set up. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
That the game didn't even follow his own protocol. It's missing the connecting bits to justify the actions that it's taking. It's like if there was another game in between that explained all this backstory. No, see, I can't work it. You can't kill the main characters that are the connection that people have to the post-apocalyptic environment. It just doesn't work.
And then worse yet, to rub salt in the wound, you're giving the main character status to the murderer of the person you were playing as.
Yeah,
I don't mind that idea in a vacuum, but not in this game. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, take any famous story, like I don't know, Shakespeare's Hamlet. There's an example. You find out, I don't know, is it the act before the last act where we get a letter? Hamlet's coming back to Denmark, and instead in the letter we find, oh, he died in the war. We're like, oh, Hamlet's dead. Okay. And then in that same act, Ophelia dies. It's like, okay, what's the story then? Who's going to kill the king? Who's going to, have a duel with Laertes? Like, what's going to happen? So something you can't just do that and expect stuff to happen.
I have a good one of those. Imagine if you're watching Alien, and then halfway through the alien kills everybody, and it's just the alien for the rest of the movie.
That would be weird. That would be really weird.
Just a gore fest. It's just a gore fest. That's all it is. Just death and murder and fright. That's it.
It's just the more that we get into this, the more I realize that it's like he has a knowledge of story, but why does he have such a hatred for his own story and the fans as it was panning out? And I know it's kind of like an homage to Children of Men, which is later brought up a couple times in this, but where did you get the idea to destroy your male lead protagonist that you play most of the game as.
And again, I don't disagree with doing that unless you know how to do it. Like if I was really ambitious and I had all this time and money and resources, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to kill off Joel. And everyone will look at me like I'm crazy. And then I'll have a huge essay outlining how I'm going to do this. And I explain to them how this can work and how the characters would care. I'll have some psychology texts. I'll refer to people having a loss of a father figure and how that relates to the audience and how the gamer can relate to that. Like I do my research. I wouldn't just say, I'm going to break a huge rule in storytelling and run with it. No, I'm going to actually plan it out. So it can be done, guys. I'm not saying this is a bad idea. It's a huge, hard problem. It's a mountain to climb. And,
you know, I didn't like it when they did it in the beginning of GTA 5 when Trevor killed Johnny from Lost in the Damned. I didn't like it then either. I wonder if he liked that or even played it. But that seemed so distasteful, and I think that they were trying to get you to sort of hate the character to start with.
Right.
But
the reason why, though,
I don't think that was productive.
It works. It can work in this sort of. The reason why it can work in this sort of genre is because it's post-apocalyptic world. People die all the time, so you expect it. It's like, oh yeah, people are going to die, but you expect them to die from the monsters, not from other people who are thus now the monsters. So I get it. It can work, but
the setup there, it doesn't make any sense. Did you get to that part in the game? Did you see that part?
I saw it, and I'm like, okay, Joel he's befriended this person they just saved with his brother, and
right.
The thing is, before that, the person they saved we knew they were going after Joel, and they didn't know how to get to him. So they didn't know where he was, and by complete fluke, that they happen to get attacked, and Joel happens to be one of the scouting party folks. Voila, they found him. So they play coy the entire time while accepting his help, and then they pounce on him. It's this bizarre in a shack in the woods or something. I was like, where did this shack come from? Like all these little setups just for this event.
Another thing is that Ellie and Dina or whatever, they're the ones that are supposed to be patrolling and making sure that nobody finds them and stuff, right? And then they go off and go to do something completely different. And then when they come back after that's when they find them there. Am I remembering that right? Because it was just
I haven't played.
His fault in the story that Joel dies, and like the way that that's resolved. Because here's what I understand. I understand that there is a strain of people that are creative video game developers that want to give denials to the players or misdirections to the players. But we've had that since Metal Gear Solid 2. People know that that's not something that players like, and that people want some sort of sequel to be an experience that is as good or better than what they played before. I don't know where this idea to piss off your fans came from. I don't think anybody really likes it anymore, except for people that get off on us getting upset, like it's some sort of joke. So I find it weird that it's like people are saying it's good writing, and I understand that they're trying to be nuanced about it, but I think that you can't make your audience hate your product and still be a good writer. That seems to be the opposite. The entire audience is Philistines, unless he thinks that we're like plebs that don't deserve his good writing. Like we can't figure out that games aren't supposed to be fun or something. Do you get that impression? Because I don't understand why else anybody would do that. Like teach us a lesson.
I really think this is a natural thing in the genre, and I don't think he had the writing chops, or that the team had the writing chops to bite off what they actually tried to chew.
Yeah.
It's doable. It's just really hard.
Yeah. You have to be very careful, and you have to figure out like a way of justifying it within the story.
Someone in the chat I wanted to address about the MGS2 thing, saying there was a reason for MGS2. I thought it worked. Yeah, I have to agree that while it did piss off fans that they were only playing as Solid Snake for a couple hours or whatever, they didn't kill him, but you play as Raiden, there's a reason why the player is in the situation that they're in. There's a context, and it's added layers. It's not just like, here's the post-apocalyptic world that we're in. It's life or death situation. This had multiple layers of reality and all that kind of stuff.
Which is because Hideo Kojima is crazy. So it's
right.
You see they change how they play because now they're seeing themselves as this child, this like teenager that doesn't have the stature of this large man, and they play differently and they look at the world differently. And it's how you can use control of a character to create such strong empathy.
This connection can be used to give the player the most compelling perspective for different moments of the story. One of the clearest examples of this is in the very beginning of the game.
We had a very different opening. We had an opening where you played as Joel and you went to the neighbor's house. You have to put one of these infected down and then run back and go get your daughter, and then you're playing as Joel every step of the way. And there was something about that opening, it just felt very familiar. And then in brainstorming with some of the designers and other people, we had this aha moment of like, well, what if you didn't play as Joel?
What if you didn't play
Dad?
as Joel?
What if you saw the whole opening through his daughter's eyes?
You in here?
Seem to be somehow connected to the nationwide
Where the heck
pandemic.
are you?
People are just more scared playing a kid than they are a capable adult. And as you're going around the house looking for your dad and you're seeing this thing on the news,
There seems to be some commotion coming from.
What was that?
it just gets creepier and creepier.
There you are.
Sarah, you've got to get out of here. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
As Joel, his daughter, and his brother try to escape the erupting chaos, the player experiences everything from the point of view of Sarah. Until Sarah's leg is hurt in the crash, so now you play as Joel, suddenly responsible for trying to carry your injured daughter to safety amidst the outbreak of an apocalypse.
Don't look, Sarah.
Why are they doing that?
Keep looking at me, baby.
During this sequence, you can't fight or hide. All you can do is keep running and hope you don't die. The player feels the stress and fear because they are the characters in this situation.
Daddy, we can't leave.
I want to mention something, because this is something that I have a problem with in a lot of games. Like, I am not the character. I am me, and I'm limited by being the character. By putting me in the position of Sarah, I then am no longer like the same level. I don't have the same level of agency. And I understand that, why they do that. When you create limiting gameplay points, you can have down periods in video games. But I remember a common weird part of the Spider-Man game that came out was there are a lot of segments where you don't play as Spider-Man. And it's to do that same kind of thing. And I'm wondering if everybody has or if there's a commonality where that's really effective, or if there's some people that are like me where it doesn't work for them, where they think, why am I put in a position where I'm limited in the circumstances that I'm in mentally as well as physically by the characters? Like, I'm locked into a linear set of events because my emotions are being set up to, you should feel scared here because you're running away from the scripted zombies. You should feel emotionally upset here because this is where your daughter gets hurt. Like, if it doesn't work, then the game is sort of, spinning its wheels because the gameplay is not really taking over for the missing emotional connection.
It almost becomes like a horror ride. What is those carnival rides where you just go through in a linear path and like, oh, scary thing here, oh, scary thing popping out of the wall. So
it's called Haunted House.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. It's that's what this is. You don't have much interaction. You just go forward. So
Dark ride. Yeah. I'm not saying that makes it bad like across the board, but I'm saying that I don't know, maybe because I understand horror games, they work the same way, and there's a limitation to all of the you have to be able to get into the character and play as the character. I understand that, but I find it unfortunate when it's not gameplay reasons. I'm not limited by a reason that has to do with the meta of the game. It's the scripting of the story imposing itself onto the gameplay. So if I go out of bounds, then I die. That kind of thing. Invisible walls, that kind of thing. Anyway.
He's gonna be fine.
But the sequence does more than simply provide engaging gameplay. It establishes critical character backstory.
Our characters have their own wants, needs, obsessions, loves, and we're saying, when you're playing our game, we want you to tap into who they are and play the game as them, not as you, as them.
The Last of Us, like most
Right,
films,
right.
is
See,
a story
that's-
about a protagonist.
That's
how to tell us.
sorry, I skipped back when I was trying to pause. That's something that I have a problem with when it comes to the presentation of this. Where were we? Sorry. Anyway, the thing is that if you're going to convince me to play as the characters, then what is the limitations of who I am in the story? Am I just a floating person perspective that you can just shift to whatever relevant character you want me to play as, or am I tied into the world as one of these characters? If I am one of those characters, then why are you switching who I'm playing as? But if I'm not, then who am I supposed to care about? And then playing with that idea in the second game by switching to the enemy makes me just wonder exactly why I'm supposed to care at all about it. So I feel like he's pushing me away from that verisimilitude that he's going for in the newer one. Whereas I feel like people remember that opening where you get to play as Sarah and then Joel because it feeds. Sarah doesn't continue, but Joel does. But we started out as that, so I felt that was pretty effective. Whereas when you kill Joel and you switch it up to the enemy, it's like the exact opposite of that. It's disengaging.
It's interesting. I remember playing back in the day Breath of Fire 4, where you actually are playing as the villain, but it's sort of like before they're the villain, how they became one. So it's kind of like a journey becoming the character you eventually face as a hero previously. So
Why did? Sorry, I was sorry to interrupt, but I was saying they could have done that here with Abby to begin with. You could have started this game as Abby in the backstory, and then maybe convince players that maybe killing Joel is a good idea.
Right.
But instead, he died as our favorite character.
That would have been a necessary setup right from the beginning, though. And we said, okay, there's this other character we don't know. Oh, her name's Abby. Who's that? And then we learn, oh, she's the daughter of this person. Who's this person? Oh, we don't know. He's a doctor. He's a good person. He's helping people. It's great. You have a great family life. Then the catastrophe hits. And then finally the father dies. She finds out like a month later, what have you. And then she goes through this journey of revenge herself. So the story can be about the same theme, the same plot, but it's told from another perspective. So we get into it. Oh, we understand. We equate with her very well. So when the scene finally comes, we go, oh, now I get it. As opposed to showing the scene first in the first few hours of the game, and then you're showing little, like what they showed was little clips of her past, little events with her friends, which is nice, which is practical, but it doesn't work. We don't like this person. We're not attracted to this person, and the fact that she's basically this buff dude. Like, I don't know if you've seen her arms, but she is really ripped.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
But
I've seen it. Yeah.
I find that to be bait for people. Like, oh, you find her weird because she's weird looking, and then people making claims of like the realism of that character doing that. But even if I just take that away, I'm still left with a character that's driven exclusively by the main thrust and message of the plot, which is just revenge, because you killed my dad, so I'm going to kill your dad.
Right.
And you're going to come and try and kill my dad, but you're better than me because you don't kill me for killing your dad, and that ends the cycle. Like, that is not worth a whole video game. I don't know how to.
Right.
That's not enough. Because we had a whole world that had a plot going on in the previous.
Right.
Whatever happened.
But we get the character of Joel. We get the character of Ellie. Ellie's just a girl. We get it. There's no big complexity about her. And then we learn about what kind of personality she has, as we normally would. The only thing special is the plot-related thing of her being immune, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting something like that to be involved in the sequel. You're like, oh, what happens with the plot of the world? What's the setting like now? No change. Yeah, there's some development here and there, but there's nothing to do with trying to help people, trying to solve that problem. Because usually in stories as big as this, of big a scale, you have some scenario where you have a goal. you want to save the world, you want to save a family, you want to stop a villain. There's nothing like that. It's just revenge. And
the
this
entire
could be
thing of
anything.
survival.
This could be any scenario in a post-apocalyptic zombie story. Pick any other genre. Pick any other. I know, just pick the same genre. Pick any other zombie movie. It's the same thing. It's just revenge.
And it doesn't even feel like they're in an apocalyptic situation most of the time because of the way that all the characters interact with each other, which is it's missing that setting piece that we're talking about that kind of reminds us what the priorities are of this world. Everybody's priorities are way out of whack in this sequel. In the first one, at least, we know that the Fireflies want this, and Joel and Ellie, they want this, and everybody has a motive and a goal, and it's like what Neil is saying here. But in this new one, it's like he got stuck in a loop of what he cared about and just didn't care about what anybody else did. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's what it felt like.
Joel has a ghost, a traumatic event that makes him afraid of change. In this opening, we are living through Joel's ghost.
Oh no. Sarah? Sarah? Davy?
After the title sequence, the game picks up 20 years later. After briefly meeting Joel's smuggling companion Tess, the player takes control of Joel as they make their way to recover some stolen weapons. Here, the game uses environmental storytelling to provide exposition. What the player sees and hears while moving through a space provides critical details about the world and how it operates. There's a good summary of this section in the script for The Last of Us, which allows me to quickly answer one of the questions I had going into this video. What does the script for a video game look like? The answer is, it depends. Depending on the purpose of the script and the personal preference of the studio developing the game, the script format can range from proprietary story software to massive Excel spreadsheets. For The Last of Us, once the game was completed, all of the various story documents were conflated into a single script. In this final script, the cinematics and key story moments are written in traditional screenplay format.
Yeah, this is the same with the movie. The script is not one document. It's a series of pages from the technical department, from the gameplay guys, the music guy. Like there's all sorts of versions of the script. So,
but this is just showing to me that the gameplay is segments. The gameplay is basically the scene changes in the script. If it was just a film, the way that this is written right here, and it says like brackets, gameplay, Sarah runs downstairs. Those are all action lines that lead to the next script line. All of the gameplay is action or scene change material. And I think that it's a little self-limiting. I'm so I can't really, speak much on this, but this to me is the reason why the criticized for cinematic sequences with like sporadic gameplay. I think somebody was going over a stream yesterday that had like 4 hours of gameplay, but it was only minutes of actual gameplay, and the rest of it was cinematic material. So it makes sense because it's in the script. It's written in the script like this, and then Neil is trying to execute this script, and then the game segments are spaced out, which is why the game feels so linear. There's no room for there to be a non-linear storytelling sequence because that would go off the script. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but now it's just all clicking to me why the games are the way that they are, why Uncharted plays the way that it does, because it's a movie.
That's one way of looking at it. I mean, it's better to plan it out than to say, okay, now we're going to listen to the gameplay department to tell us what the story's next, which ends up happening because you're making a game. It is a game, so you have to think about what's more important. So the priority is always gameplay. So having a planned out script is great. The problem is, do they know how that relates to the game? And do they have to change things on the fly? So that's where you get the scope creep. That's where you get to things where you have to connect. You can't connect these two scenes. We have to make another level, or we have to do this. We have to get another character, change the script around. So, right. Sometimes.
It's too bad that there's not branching script options though, and an expanded idea about what potential is, because that would be. See, let me just say what my primary conceit here is that we have this almost gaslighting of how impressive The Last of Us is, and I understand what Letters, from the screenplay is trying to do here. He's trying to explain in basic terms to somebody who may not know anything about video games how. But as somebody who plays a lot of video games, you have to ask yourself what exactly about the environmental storytelling in The Last of Us is incredibly different from something that would be in Half-Life 2 or in any game. So that's really weird. But then I think about games like New Vegas, and I know that that's an RPG. I know that this is not like that. But I think about how choices in games, a Mass Effect or a BioWare title, for example, they could even have third-person action segments. How player choice is eliminated by the presence of a linear script that doesn't have branching elements to it. But if you have branching elements, then how is Neil going to get his message across if you're denying his agency as the writer for the characters that you're playing as? Because he's making the stipulation that we are the characters. But if we were the characters, we could choose for the characters. What we really are the witnesses of the characters, and he's making the choices, and we're just acting it out.
Yeah.
We are acting as them. We aren't them.
We get that argument a lot with BioWare titles. Like, how would you control this character? Are you really doing what Commander Shepard would do?
Well, I feel closer to Shepard and his decision-making process than I do Ellie or Joel in The Last of Us.
Oh,
because you do get a say. And that's the reason why games are cool, which is what they're saying. And I feel like this is a little bit of a contradiction to that, and seems to, I think, show, this is just something I'm realizing, that the auteur theory of film kind of goes against the open-natured programming aspect of games. So I think I'd prefer a nerdy Deus Ex style game where there's all these choices going on that you can select and replay than having a linear storytelling experience that's only going to lead to one outcome, like BioShock Infinite. Hopefully I'm making some sense there.
No, I got what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Is summarized in prose. Here's the prose for this section of the game. The city is under constant martial law with soldiers posted at street corners. In another section of the city, suspects are lined up on their knees with their hands on their head. A medical soldier with a handheld scanner goes down the line, scanning people for the fungal infection. A woman tests positive and argues that she's not infected. Soldiers hold the woman down while the medical soldier injects her with a syringe. The woman convulses before dying. Another man on his knees stands up and runs away. Without hesitation, a soldier raises his rifle and shoots the man. It's clear that this world is a dangerous place. So how is the player supposed to navigate all of this? The Last of Us...
I like how the guard there just stood right by. He was like less than a meter away from the guy who got shot. Just, nope, don't care.
Because there's not a script that's going to interact with the non-player character and the environment.
Yeah, there's two.
So he just doesn't notice it.
There's a separation between those two scenes, like the level, and then that. This is like environmental storytelling. You don't even need to watch that, I bet. And
yeah,
there's just that. That's the boundary. So anything beyond that boundary, literally that blue, whatever you call those things, that is the end of that scene. So the fact that that guy ran out and the guard just did not care was like,
Okay. It's because it's not written into the script, so they're not planning for it at all. That's one of those things in games that's fun to exploit. But again, I think that goes back to we could talk about Metal Gear and how they emphasize the vertical slice. Like in MGS3, there's a little section where it's kind of tangential to the plot, but you can test out all the techniques that you have, and all of the individual base AI units in that game can be interacted with almost any technique that you have available to you, or interactions are taken into consideration. So you sort of manipulate the writing of the story, even though the story is on rails. How the story, like I was saying earlier, how you actually are the player, you are the character, as opposed to being the actor for the character, acting out the plot. There's more that game is planned for interactivity, whereas this game is planning for you to walk by that thing. There's not an interactive component in it. It's part of the like the Disneyland ride. You're going through what is that haunted house in Disneyland called? The Haunted Mansion.
Uses the narrative to teach gameplay mechanics in an emotional way.
So usually when we start production on a game, the beginning is one of the last things you work on because that's when you have locked down your mechanics. Okay, now we need to train them. We have to like expose the player to each thing their character can do. But you don't want to just throw a big text box on the screen like that's your last resort. It's like, are there ways through the narrative that you could teach them?
In the game, as Joel and Tess are on their way to recover their stolen weapons, there's an explosion in the quarantine zone. So they have to run and heal their injuries.
Patch yourself up, all right?
Following Joel and Tess along their usual smuggling path,
Not exactly very emotional, but okay, that is technically a tutorial.
Sure, yeah. Usually you just want context of the beginning of the story to have basic gameplay elements that dole it out piece by piece, obviously. That's pretty standard. But again, that's standard, and I appreciate Letters from the Screenplay for saying that. But it's so weird to have The Last of Us be the best example for that. I don't know why that's so special. Maybe because it's doing what it's supposed to, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
gives a sense of their routine and provides an opportunity to learn how to reload weapons.
But it's like that line on the screen does exactly what you didn't need to do anything.
Ones
Just,
that we did,
you know,
was all kind of shooters have you press L2 to aim, R2 to shoot. And like, okay, what's an interesting way to teach that? And in the opening of the game, it's like Joel and Tess are trying to get to this guy Robert. They're using their smuggling routes. One of them has infected in it.
Hold up. Spores.
And as they crawl through, they see a guy on the ground, another smuggler. Some of the environment has collapsed on him, and he begs you to kill him because his mask broke and he breathed in some spores.
My mask broke. Don't leave me to turn.
And then this box comes in. It's like, press L2 to aim, press R2 to shoot. And they're like, oh, that's how you're going to teach me to shoot.
What do you want to do?
So again, it's a way to expose you to mechanic, teach you it, and put some emotional weight behind it, and show you this is the world that you live in.
Poor bastard.
After some unexpected complications, Joel and Tess learn that the only way to get their weapons back is to smuggle some very unusual cargo.
Joel, give me a hand with this.
Ellie, a fierce 14-year-old girl, charges out from a nearby room, switchblade in hand.
Fuck away from me!
Tess catches Ellie's arm. Ellie struggles to get free.
Let her go.
The relationship between Joel and Ellie is established quickly in their very first cinematic.
I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's
Bullshit,
the
I'm not
best
Ellie.
idea.
him.
Cinematics are the part of video games that are most similar to film, and I was curious when and why they choose to use them.
When do you use cutscenes? When do you not? Is there any kind of logic or decision making that goes into that?
Yeah, so usually cinematics is for specific emotional turns where we want to slow things down or we want to look at someone's face, get a nuance of a close-up performance that you can't during gameplay. So for example, Joel coming home and talking to Sarah and her giving him a watch, there's not going to be...
See, I compare this to Metal Gear Solid, where there was no face. There was no... you know it's someone's face. You just can't see the emotion. So you have to rely on the actors to do their job. So you're essentially just giving exposition. So to have these ideas, well, you're here to do this. You're here to have emotion. It's like, well, sure, that's good, but that's not why you have it. That's like saying, well, you have actors for drama. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not why you have actors. That's a nice thing to have. That's a nice reaction to have. But it's like saying, this is going to be a really scary scene because we put horror in it. It's like, well, maybe it'll be scary for me. You don't know. So I don't like this idea that we use technology so we could have an emotion. It's like, well, we certainly hope so, but that's not the point of the technology.
I like the Valve method in Portal and Half-Life 2, where they corral the player into areas where they can't really go anywhere, but there's a diegetic reason. There's a something falls into position and you can't climb out or what have you, and there's no disconnection between the player being able to move around and or unskippable cutscenes. You're still in the same context as you were when you were playing the game. It's just that the game is now forcing you to stop and slow down, and since there's nothing else going on, you just what the game wants you to. Or, you know, if the game actually does take control from you, like I said, it gives you a reason. So you get into in one of the levels, you're in the Citadel, and you become a prisoner willingly because there's no other way to go forward. So you get it takes away your agency, but it's because you have to make that choice to progress the game
Right.
according to what's right in front of you. According to all available tools that you can use and the map design, it forces you to do that. But it doesn't take away your ability to use the controller or your mouse and keyboard to express yourself, which is, to me, part of the problem that I have with a lot of video game storytelling. How many times do people, you know, and I'm sure chat will know, how many times have you played a Call of Duty game or one of these shooter games and you almost get the villain, and then right at the end they just kick you or get into a helicopter or blow up and you
Right.
can't do anything about it, even though you were just killing everybody like the master. Suddenly, you know, you're no longer Doom Guy for 5 seconds.
Right.
And that's taking agency away from players.
It's referred to, it's a psychological concept called locus of control, where you have two states. One is where you know what you can do, and in the game you could fire a gun and you kill a guy. And then there's maybe it's called negative reinforcement. There's other terms for it. Whereas you're trying to get out of a scenario, or the scenario is not working the same way you think it should, and it's taking control of you. So you feel like you have agency or you don't. And you're always jumping between those two states. Like when you finally kill the last boss, you deplete his energy, and he's still alive. And you're like, wait a second, I just totally killed you. I shot you in the head 5 times. Why are you still talking to me? So there's a disconnect between narrative and gameplay at that point. And if you don't understand that locus of control of what you give the player the ability to do, and then suddenly you take it away. That's why games like Fallout are so good, because you can kill anyone. You can go anywhere. You can do this or that. You don't have to follow this plot line. You can follow the other plot line. So
For the most part, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Obviously, there's limitations with it, but that's why people love that game so much. On top of the freedom of giving people the ability to modify it and do even more of what they wanted to do. So
it's the big dichotomy they broke down in the beginning of this was passive entertainment is what a movie's about, and active entertainment is what a video game is about. And I find it very telling that script, which is a linear script, has less gameplay segments enumerated on it than it does visual cinematic sequences. And then the idea of taking control of the player so that you can give them a cinematic sequence. It's not a bad thing necessarily. I would say that the challenge to a game designer is how to minimize that, not how to utilize it the most. Efficiently, yeah, sure, but how can you not do that and still do what you want to do? Show the face, show emotional reactions. How do you get a player's attention unconsciously, subconsciously, without them thinking you're removing their agency? I like storytelling that's like that, but it's difficult. And this is working, or it worked, and it probably would have worked again if they didn't make the choices that they did.
Here's a super chat from Mohammed Ramadan. Thank you, sir. Rewatching this again, other games have done this way better. Red Dead Redemption 1 intro and GTA 4 intro were more complex, plus tutorials do what's unique here. Hi, Rags.
Hello. I'm not Rags, but I will do that. No, it's not, I'm with you on that, on it not being unique, but I really think that because you got to give Letters from the Screenplay benefit of the doubt. He is trying to be educated. He's doing this for non-gamers, people that are just not familiar with this, and he's just using The Last of Us as an example. I think he enamors the fact that he was so moved by it, he found it so effective that here's a good example of how to teach everything that we're going over. But yeah, you're 20 years before, 10 years before this game came out, there were other games that were doing the same thing.
Right.
And I mean that.
Glib, you totally cut out there. Are you done?
Oh, yeah, I was done. It's fine.
Okay, great.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Sorry.
interesting gameplay in that, but we still need to establish a relationship with each character. We'll use a cutscene there.
You like it?
Setting up the contentious relationship between Joel and Ellie is an important plot point. In fact, it's the inciting incident of the game. And being able to see the performance of the characters' faces allows for nuance and subtext.
What are you doing?
Killing time.
Well, what am I supposed to do?
Oh.
I am sure you will figure that out.
Your watch is broken.
As soon as the characters get outside the quarantine zone, it's revealed that Ellie is immune to the disease, that within her might be the cure. It's now up to Joel to protect Ellie and get her to safety. And we know from having played the opening sequence, where he was unable to save his own daughter, why this is such an emotional task.
So much of the game is the relationship between Ellie and Joel. If we don't succeed and make you care about this relationship, make you feel these characters love each other the way a father and a daughter can love each other, this unconditional love, we will have failed. Everything is depending on that.
So is that
Man, that
everything
is
you hope
such
for?
a weird thing to betray like 7 years later. I don't get it.
Yeah, that is really weird.
So weird.
Don't understand. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Maybe he was watching too much Game of Thrones. Oh, it's good to kill off characters we love.
That's the problem. He didn't get it because ultimately at least like Game of Thrones, the book, the bad guys win in book 3. However, the good guys still have people fighting for them in books 4 and 5 and are still fighting for them even though they've lost because of their personal honor. The show changed that for the worse because Benioff and Weiss are kind of nihilists. They don't care. But yeah, that's a big problem. You have to actually set up the character and give them motivations and flesh them out before you change them into a protagonist. That's a really, really strange decision to do.
And I don't think we're against the idea of tragedy or having a bleak future or a sad downer story. The thing is, though, the plot doesn't end up going anywhere, and all you're left with is just a whole bunch of bodies that you went through to get nothing, which would have been one extra body. So you sit there going, Ellie, what is wrong with you? What just happened in your head? I know you loved Joel. You cared about him enough to go on a slaughter spree, and you couldn't seal the deal. What exactly happened? And you would think you would feel something for Abby because the audience, I guess, cares somewhat because we played as Abby for 15 hours. For whatever reason, the story gave us Abby to control and learn about. So you think, okay, maybe Ellie can relate to Abby. But no. Even the fact they both lost their fathers, they both understood what's going on. Even Ellie was explaining to Abby that I'm the reason why all this is happening. So she understands Abby to a degree. But instead of getting that, we get a flashback of Joel for 2 seconds, as if that's suddenly going to change anything. It doesn't make sense, is what I'm saying. So that's all we want in our stories. If you want a plot, however poorly you tell it, at least it makes sense because we know the motivation of where you're going. And to have that switch or turn off right near, right when you're about to get the jewel, you're right there, and you're like, I don't like jewels. Or I'm not interested in jewels anymore. You're like, really? Okay.
I wonder if he's if killing off Joel was killing off the old version of what his storytelling or whatever was about, what he cared about.
I don't think so. Yeah. I think that's a bit that would be nihilistic. Yeah, that would be weird.
I don't know. It makes me think a lot though, because so far I haven't seen any live reactions of gamers enjoying what they're
Oh god, yeah. Just wait for the shills to do their crying reaction to every bloody scene. Oh, it's so tragic. Oh, it's yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's gonna be cringy. The Some Ordinary Gamer stream was absolute catharsis to see Mudahar just decimate the game and complain about it to the point where he did the same thing Poods did, which is they minimized the game completely and went to the PlayStation Home. Just like had to sit there for a second, like, man, because at this point it's there goes another main character that's been killed off in Western media, and a character people liked, and it affects the entire population again. It's like, you do that. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's just, I just hope, I'm glad that they did not do that to Geralt of Rivia in the show. And I don't believe it.
That would have ruined the entire, like, that would not make any sense. That would have ruined everything.
Dolomaticus says, I would bank on the fact that he didn't write Joel, so since it is not his creation, he trashed it. Do we know if who created that? I don't know enough about that. I wish I did. That would be very convenient. If anybody in chat knows who actually created Joel and Ellie originally, or who created the concepts for them, I'd love to know that. But yeah.
Someone's asking me about if I'm going to watch Tajgay's reaction. I don't know who Tajgay is.
Is that a mispronunciation? Is that a misspelling? I don't know.
Is it Tajay? I know Tajay. He's a guy who cries on game trailers.
That's got to be.
It's probably Tajay.
Yeah. Tajay. Yeah, I think that's what he means.
I'm not really interested in watching the fanboys because I'm sort of against fanboys. In case you guys haven't noticed my channel, I sort of go against them every turn. So, no, I probably won't. But unless you guys like specifically want me to look at one thing, I'll be happy to.
All right.
Jury's still out. But man, can't deny that view.
But if a game simply used cinematics to display the relationship between two characters, it would just be a movie. So the question is, how do you make the player feel a relationship?
Oh dear.
When you're playing the game, again, with the statement of like, we need you to care about this relationship, we need these characters to rely on one another, and so much of our game is action and combat, and if Ellie's just hiding and not participating, then you don't care as much about her. She starts feeling more like a burden.
In The Last of Us, the player is constantly trying to overcome obstacles. Everything from solving puzzles to fighting off infected. As you play, you're accompanied by Ellie, an NPC, or non-player character, who literally helps you overcome these obstacles.
You have two characters, and you constantly have to think about how do I have to rely on one another? So I might have a gate that I can't get past.
Oh, shit. It's jammed from the other side.
If I'm with Ellie, I can boost her over the gate, she can open it from the other side, so I'm learning to rely on Ellie. If I came on this gate and I didn't have Ellie, I'd have to find a different solution.
Okay. Ta-da!
See, like questions like that are like, well, why can't Joel just jump up there and climb it himself? Like, what's stopping him? Like all these little questions that run through your mind as a gamer. As you see the mechanics working, it's like, yeah, he's a big enough guy. He got a chain link fence. What's the problem?
There's a lot of that's a big diegetic issue in games, but they have to box you in there somewhere to restrict you from going wherever you want or create a different style of game. But I really would love to play a game where the character was competent and could climb around and amble over the entire environment, and there was to go and figure out new obstacles that you could traverse and unlock new things. But games are not infinite like that.
Like with Ezio Auditore in Assassin's Creed, we just seen this door. Like, yeah, give me like 2 seconds, I'll run up it. Like,
since the player is constantly in life or death situations, Ellie literally helps you survive.
Ellie can save you. Ellie can pick up a brick and throw it at a dude and give you just enough opening for you to put him down and survive. Likewise, if someone grabs you and pins you against the wall, Ellie might, if she's around, jump on the guy's back and stab him to give you that opening. So again, it's this feeling very unique to games of like, oh, I've learned to rely on this person. Now when they're not around, I want them around.
I'm kind of curious why they use a big white background. I know this is pretty typical in movie shoots, photo shoots. Why not just sit down with him and have a conversation? What was the point of having this big exposition? I don't get it. Maybe I'm just not an interview kind of guy. I just get a nice chair, have a seat, talk to him like a human.
Yeah, he's trying to make it like really, really high end.
I guess. Yeah.
But Ellie isn't there simply to enhance game mechanics. There is performance happening even when you're just walking around the city.
The way she's talking and the way she's experiencing the scene and her demeanor is going to change how you feel about her. So, for example, after Ellie and Joel get in a fight in the hotel in Pittsburgh,
And you just hang back like I told you to.
you could see her, she's crossing her arms more, she's more standoffish, she's talking less than she's used to. Where, again, in a film, you can control the pacing and the exact shots. Here, it's just like, oh, this person that's walking with me is behaving differently. This is what it feels like to be in a fight.
See, this is important, not because, it's a relevant part of storytelling, but when you have characters and you describe them, I always say, do the same way a detective would look at a person, how they walk and how they talk. And how they talk denotes their mood. It denotes why they're walking, how they're walking, what does this mean? So in the book I wrote, I don't go into character moods because I imply that you should know what they're going through, but you should never say they are feeling sad or they are feeling X. Show us through characterization, through their personality, the way they walk and the way they talk. That's the simplest way of doing it. So stuff like this is great. But there's the always underlying, it's not for emotional sake. It's for the character's sake. Like that, the mood is like one iota, one element of a personality. It's like you're going in drive 1 or drive 2 or reverse of your car. It's just one of multiple stages of a car that you can use to go from here to there. The same with personalities, same with feelings. You could feel sad one moment and happy the next. So don't focus on the emotion. Yes, that's nice. Yes, it's a good quality to have, but that's not the point of emotion. For the sake of it, rather.
Behavior of the NPC changes how you feel about them. So now that we've covered all the various ways the game makes the player experience Joel and Ellie's relationship, I want to look at one last sequence. It's one of my favorites in the game, and I think it demonstrates how all these pieces come together. Toward the end of the game, Ellie has a traumatic experience where she's taken by a group of cannibals and narrowly finds a way to escape.
She grabs this machete and she kills David in the most brutal way, just hacks him. And even past the point where he's dead, and you're seeing this effect now, this her being on her own, fighting all these people, killing, murdering, it's having a toll on her. And we leave them just as Joel comes in and pulls her off of David and holds her and embraces her like his own daughter. He even calls her baby girl, the same phrase he used for his daughter.
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
Joel.
What a bunch of...
The game cuts to a few months later.
Yeah,
but the
especially
weight
since...
Look, Ellie is this character who's just really angry and she just wants to kill everybody or whatever in that moment. And then in the next game, she's like, I'm going to kill you to Abby. And then in the end of the game, she just gives up because what? It's like so inconsistent. And somebody was mentioning, I remember earlier I read, did Neil forget that Joel ran over a dude because he thought he was faking? Like, anybody who he thinks that he's suspicious of, he's super cautious around. And I realize that Neil's probably not the one paying attention to continuity of characters. He's looking for the emotion. He's looking for that line between where the player is and the characters are, and how the writing connects those two things together. So if it's emotionally effective for him to get his point across, he does something, regardless of whether or not it's in character anymore. And it reminds me, and I think a lot of people, of stuff like The Last Jedi, where the characters are not necessarily acting rational according to their own characters. The writing is not paying attention to what other people know about the characters.
Yeah, this is a scene where I want Luke to be depressed. This is a scene where I want Luke to be scared. You're like, okay, is that really what Luke is? Does he get scared and depressed? Is that
why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
You have so much emotional control. You're a Jedi master. You've been practicing this way. You've been meditating for decades. Oh, you're scared? Really? Okay.
Makes no sense, man.
But Ellie's experience remains.
Where Ellie the whole game has been the optimistic one, the peppy one. She does jokes. She's the one that calls Joel on his bullshit. She's just got all this energy. And you're coming in and she's quiet and she's distant.
Yeah, once we're done with this whole thing, I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar. Yeah, I reckon you'd really like that. What do you say, huh?
She doesn't respond, and you get this interactive prop above her head that you've had the whole game where you can talk to her, like, and you hit it again, like Ellie. And you hit it again, Ellie.
Ellie, I'm talking to you.
Huh? Oh. Yeah, sure, that sounds great.
But you could tell something is really off with her. And that was important for us to show that Ellie has an arc, that Ellie starts as this very innocent, naive person, and you can't survive in this world without it corrupting you in some way, without it having some toll on your personality.
Here, the behavior of the NPC you're paired with is once again revealing character. Moments later, you're in a bus station and need to boost Ellie up to grab a ladder, something you've done time and time again in the game.
Well, we could use that ladder.
You've done it so much.
Literally run up and grab it. It's not far. Just jump there, grab it, and it'll come crashing down. You'll be fine.
This is part of the problem with the gameplay in this game. But it's weird to me because this just reminds me of the stuff that I was seeing in BioShock Infinite the exact same year. It's like you got to escort this character, and they're like a daughter analog, and it's like, man, did you guys just write the same script or something? And I don't know what's going on here, but whatever.
That now the game can subvert your expectations.
So there's a ladder on top of a ledge, and you call Ellie, and you click it, and Ellie's not there.
Here we go. Ellie.
And you turn around and you see she's just there sitting.
Hurry up!
despondent.
Press
Ellie.
X to...
What?
Yeah, it's not some impressive, amazing thing. If you do this thing multiple times during the game, maybe a designer would be like, hey, why don't we put some narrative focus to the gameplay? You're like, wow, what an idea. You're putting story in your game. That's great. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's pretty normal.
I'm pretty familiar in video games when characters won't do what I say for them to do. There have been a lot of times when my escort companion NPC has gotten stuck in doorways. Not fun.
In BioWare's case, they just teleport. Every time you need them, they're there.
I just
That's
remembered
funny.
that. That's hilarious.
That's funny. Or I know that Southpaw was having a fun time I think it was a couple days ago, where like one of the NPCs was literally running in a circle.
Oh, the AI
yeah.
in The Last of Us. I don't know if you remember other games like Watch Dogs. There's the downgrade, like you see the E3 trailer demo, and then you get the actual game. The downgrade comes in the version of graphics and AI. In AI, they were going to do so many things with The Last of Us. Because of the dynamic environment, I can grab a brick, you can grab a bottle, you can throw it, you can use it as a weapon, and all the stuff that happens in between. I can't remember who did the video on it. This was a few years ago, but they showcased what was promised and what they got. Now, everyone knows there's a downgrade from marketing. That's kind of how it goes. But they weren't expecting this large downgrade in AI technology or AI at all. It was pretty much playing a game from 15 years ago. So, a lot of promises.
It makes, but like that, seeing the script and the way that Neil writes his scripts out, and then it's also based on the Excel sheet of where the gameplay breaks and story cinematic sequences are. It now makes perfect sense to me why they wouldn't add more gameplay elements or new AI. Those segments are just going to be little sandboxes, little, shooting galleries or stealth areas that are just going to be linking in between different sequences. So what else could you add in there? You can only go so far. You get back into the linear part of the map that has to be drawn. So I understand why that there's not very much new custom thing, because the gameplay is not expanded, because they did not fundamentally change the way that they are ordering the sequences that you are playing in. It's still linear narrative first, with an emphasis on the emotional connections between the characters. Because that's what Neil really cares about, it seems.
The ladder. Come on.
Right.
It's hard to convey how surprising this is without actually playing the game, but it's one of my favorite moments in any game I've ever played.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, you can like whatever you like in the game, but if he finds this fascinating, I mean, geez, other games that do this, other puzzles that do this all the time, since like Zelda on the Super Nintendo. There's a button you have to press. Oh, I'll use the normal method, using the block to run. Oh, the block isn't there. How do I get the button to be depressed? Oh, I have to use a trick in the level to hit the button with a ricochet or something. Like there's this is like standard game design.
This is like if my favorite F1 part where you go up to the microwave and you press it enough and the food inside explodes. Like, wow, that level of interactivity really made me feel like I was in the game.
Yeah, like play Portal for any few minutes. There'll be a switch up to the normal formula of getting past a certain level. So
now I understand, to be honest, because I don't want to be too cynical. My favorite dialogue parts, my favorite like character interactions of the Titanfall 2 campaign are those little banter bits between BT and the man. I think his name is Jack. Yeah, Jack Cooper. And in those sequences, it's all about the interaction between the two characters, referencing what's happening in the scenario, and then it gives you stakes. And a lot of the humor and the dialogue is based on the juxtaposition between a fish out of water, regular old soldier stepping up to the plate, and a machine that is trying to relate to the human being but is not necessarily. It's the age old, is the AI self-aware or not? And then, by the ending, you get that touching bit where it's like, oh, maybe it did care about me as much as I did. So that's more standard storytelling. I don't know why that would be the best thing ever, because that's in a lot of games. That's in almost any good narrative game. Very strange.
I'm not against this guy for saying that, because everyone has their own likes and dislikes. But the actual problem is, it's a puzzle I can't solve. Let's have some story cutscene. Okay. It's basically a tutorial. Like any tutorial would do the same thing.
Perfect example of how to use gameplay mechanics to convey emotion. You feel what a toll this journey has had on Ellie.
And then you boost her, and she starts lowering this ladder, and something catches her off guard. She's like, oh my god, and she just drops the ladder and runs off.
Oh my god.
And now your panic starts to set in. What did you see? You yell out there. She doesn't respond, so you have to pick up the ladder,
Ellie!
Climb up, and then go find it.
Ellie!
Here, empathy through control kicks in. The girl you have to protect may be in danger, and it's up to you to see if she's okay. And that's when this happens.
She's right there. You were watching her the entire time. She's fine. She's just excited. See, I don't mind the argument. He's just not proving it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. He's marveling at something that he's not really... Like, if I wasn't also marveling at it, then I wouldn't be convinced, which is... I'm not, because I'm not a huge fan of these games. But I get it. I understand what he's trying to say. I'm just saying I don't feel it.
Yeah, and there's no shock. There's no tension. She's literally 4 meters away, and you're just chasing after her because she got excited. You're like, what's wrong, Ellie? And you're just chasing after her. So you're just chasing after her. That's it.
Anytime I think about fear in a video game, I have to compare it to the good stuff like Soma and Amnesia. Because Amnesia had nothing that made me feel as scared as that. Yeah. Startled or whatever. I don't even know. Just that suspenseful fear of that something bad.
Right.
A lot of these games, the narrative is so on the rails that, like...
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? Even if something bad's going to happen, I'm probably not even going to be able to do anything about it, and it won't have consequences.
Yeah,
so,
Dark Descent is... The narrative is weird itself as well, but you understand it at least. You're like, okay, you're back in time, or there's some Roman guy or whatever. Like, okay, fine. But you get the fact that you're chasing after something, and you don't know how, and what I'm not going to spoil it, but it's a very strange game, to put it lightly. But it's enough for you to understand what's going on.
Right.
Like games like Fatal Frame, it's like, okay, you have a magical camera, there are ghosts. It's like, all right, I could buy that. That's enough. I guess I can only use the magical film to capture ghosts and thus save myself. Okay, great. I walk like a really. I'm basically a 14-year-old girl running around with a camera in the dark in a haunted mansion. You're like, okay. So
see, I like the idea of getting into a role and being able to play it. Just the tools that are don't limit my creativity or my brain when you have set up such a wonderful thing that allows me to get into the character. I don't like this. I don't like obvious limitations. I don't like the obvious invisible walls. I don't like not being able to jump or clamber over an obstacle that looks easily vaultable or whatever it is. And don't make it so that I'm only going to get one experience every time that I load up the game. That every decision making has to be on the rails, like Battlefield 3's campaign or something. Like if I go east or west too much, I'm going to lose, because you might as well just make a movie at that point, or a TV series.
Super chat from Sensei Mike. Smud, great content. Thank you, sir. Always appreciate the kudos.
Arigato gozaimasu.
Yes, let's keep going.
You see this? Don't scare it.
I won't.
The giraffe moment is very much result of really tight structure. We just came from a sequence where we want to...
Actually, you know what? It was thrown in at the last minute. They wanted to add some more stuff, and they didn't know what to do. I think it was deer in the design. And they thought, well, how are we going to get a deer in this shot where Ellie's excited? It's like, no, we need something bigger. What's the biggest animal that we could possibly have? A giraffe.
And then they added a zebra into The Last of Us 2 with Abby to make some sort of comparison that it's at the same time period. I don't know. I like the idea. Here's the thing. In a video game, to me, the video game version of Chekhov's gun, unlike movies, is if you show me something in a game, I want to play with it. It's not like it has to be. It's not like a Chekhov's gun. It has to go off at some point like a movie. It's not a scripted event. If somebody shows up in a vehicle and says, "Get in," I want there to be a vehicle sequence. Now, I'm not saying it's all these things, because ultimately what I'm asking for is the best game ever, where I can just go into any door, do whatever I want, jump off a building, fly, all these different things, and it all makes sense. That's never going to happen. But the more somebody thinks player and considers what I'm going to be able to do and gives me routines that I can go into and variability in the game style. Let's say one day I'm thinking, oh, you know what? I don't feel like dodging, and I've been playing a sneaky character that's agility based. I feel like just getting in there today and beating people in with a hammer, and it's one of these games. Well, I want there to be an equal amount of game play style as there is for the other play style. But we can't really have that if it's a linear narrative movie game. And I have to say, at least The Last of Us is not like the Walking Dead Telltale game. At least it has real gameplay in it, that you can shoot people and stuff or whatever, rudimentary stuff.
Yeah.
These aren't terrible games, you know what I mean, from the gameplay perspective. They're just run-of-the-mill, and I'll apply that to Uncharted as well.
Yeah, the cutscenes, you want to be able to do the same things in gameplay that you see in a cutscene, and it really pisses off the player when you have what's called cutscene power to the max trope, where you have characters that are super powerful or jump like 2 meters or 3 meters in the air. Like, why can't I jump like that? So it ruins the whole connection between the story and the gameplay, which you never do.
The toll of all the violence, the trauma it has on Ellie. You just feel so bad for her. This kid is gone. Maybe she'll never recover. And Ellie is just over the moon seeing these giraffes. And you can go up to them and you can pet them.
Hey there. So fucking cool.
And the reason that is there is to bring the child back. Is to show she still has that innocence. She still has...
Yeah, I'm sure that was it. Yeah, that's totally it, Neil, for sure. Exactly. You got it.
I mean, even if that is the case, it so far, because we're getting pretty far into this video. There's only a couple minutes left, and we have to talk about Skillshare. But every single example has been, and this is just really telling, aside from the small list of mechanical to storytelling elements that Letters from the Screenplay is trying to enumerate on, we have Neil explaining the reasoning why he's doing things, is all because of how he wants the player to feel. And, you know, there's a couple of them where he says, oh, you know, I want to teach people how to, a tutorial a certain way. So I put them in a situation that has a story element related or that introduces you to the world. It's like, yeah, that's obvious. I've been doing that since Call of Duty 2 when I threw a potato at a tub as a grenade. Like, that's not unique. But the thing that he's connected to is the emotional interaction with the character and the player. And I think that The Last of Us 2 is like, there's something here that is disconnected in the last like 5 years or something, because he's playing with the gimmicks of, I'm going to kill my character. I'm going to play as the evil character. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it so that you can't take revenge at the end. Like, we've all played with these elements before, but for some reason he's hammering it home like it matters more than everything else. Because like one of my favorite games is Hotline Miami and Hotline Miami 2. And if anybody's played Hotline Miami 2, that is basically a nihilistic game where nothing really matters, and the game wants you to shut it off. It's very similar, but the game itself is awesome and is the complete opposite of that perspective. It's have fun with it, go kill everybody. So you have all this catharsis, and then at the end of it, you don't gain anything from it, but you had fun.
Which is interesting, because when you talk about tragedy, and a lot of these characters you care about, they die, which is sad in and of itself. But the whole point is, well, at least we're talking about Aristotle, the whole point of tragedy is catharsis. This is why you go see plays, this is why you go see movies, to alleviate this negative emotion in your body that you have to get rid of, and you can't figure out any other way to do it. So you rely on fiction, rely on the stage, and you feel better once it's out of your system. In this regard, it's making negative experiences for you, which should be cathartic, but they're not causing tragedy. It's just bleak and grim and dark. It's not this beautiful story of tragedy. It's this disgusting story of tragedy. And I don't know why people don't get this. I don't know why they don't understand the difference.
Yes, that's a very clear distinction. And I think Mudahar brought up pretty aptly Spec Ops The Line. And I highly encourage everybody to go check out the Bro Team Spec Ops Line review, because it's hilarious. But that game, like Apocalypse Now in video game format, gives you a bog Gears of War third-person shooter experience with the regular old jingoistic American, you know, everything that these leftist YouTubers or whatever would love to tear apart. And then it flips it on its head in the way that the storytelling is saying you're wrong for doing all these things, and it gives you a good reason for why you're wrong. It explains why your actions are wrong across the board, but not necessarily that you had a choice. And that meant being faced with the fact that you are doing an immoral action but you don't have much of a choice is a deeper experience than I am going to see my favorite character get killed before me. You're not really taking ownership for that. And you're not taking ownership for not killing Abby at the end because you didn't have a choice. You're getting enraged by the fact you didn't get a choice. And I am unsure exactly what the message of that is from Neil. Like, why did he not want to give us choice as gamers? What is he saying, that games are bad, that we shouldn't play a game? I don't understand that.
It's possible.
So odd.
The same game, the first game was linear, so the choice to sacrifice or save Abby was not available. But if we're talking about a character like Joel, obviously he would have saved Abby, or sorry, Ellie. That's right. A given. Like that's his character, so it's fine. Do you want to add to that? Do they want to have things where the characters start behaving differently? Probably not. And then do we suddenly start giving characters control through the player? Maybe not. I don't know if that's going to work well, especially near the ending, when it's two linear stories, really. So
yeah, going for like a tragedy is very difficult because like Shakespeare, like even when he did a tragedy, there was some element of hope left behind of something continuing. Like Macbeth has
right.
Duncan, son being put on the throne. You have in Hamlet, Horatio is still left alive. King Lear, there's still a few people left after that to pick up the rubble of what he broke with his incompetence and his lack of insight into his own children.
Yeah, with Ellie, Dina's gone. She left. With Ellie's, Joel's brother, he's around too. He should have died because he got shot in the head, but now he's fine. So he's still around. But he's pretty much an offshoot of Ellie. They're the same character, only one's a side character. So yeah, it's bleak. There's nothing left to hold on to. And in the last scene, you just see Ellie just walking out into the field. You're just like, oh, she's done. Okay, great. We don't have to worry about that anymore. So I just got a massive super chat. I'm going to read that at the end because it's going to hang around. But I'm going to finish off. We have 1 minute left.
Yeah, sure.
Hopefulness. She can still smile. Despite all the horrible things these characters have experienced, she still have life within her.
We get the briefest of cinematics where we see their faces during this emotional turning point.
She's human.
That's the opposite of the ending of The Last of Us 2.
It's got its ups and downs.
Is it all you ever hoped for? Oh God, ask that to your fans.
You can't deny the view, though.
And we are one step closer to the completion of Joel's arc.
The kind of life that Joel has suppressed and shut down comes through with Ellie. And then it's that's probably the happiest moment, coming from such the dark of winter to this really happy moment. That really sets us up for the darkness of what we need to head into. To me, great story structure is constantly doing this. And that's...
dramatic structure? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's a good... I think that, story structure doesn't, it has more of a curve that at least I've seen, rather than a wavy line. What is it? Heart monitor shape.
Yeah.
Let's go with that heart monitor shape.
I'm blown away because it's okay, now I'm starting to see why we should have known all along. Because if The Last of Us 1 was just Joel's mad dad, then he learns how to be dad again. That's not a good arc, really.
Yeah, if he's referring to Kurt Vonnegut's understanding of story structure where it's all dramatic, so it's you start up high, you go low. If that's what he means, then fine, but that's not story structure. That's dramatic structure. I think people tend to connect those two because they're so related, and that's fine. But story structure, again, is akin to style the same way style is akin to structure for story. It goes a certain path, a certain way based off a character motivation. And that plot point switches, but there's no real drama associated with the plot point. It's just a mechanical thing to say, okay, got to get through this section, got to get through this door, got to go over this hill, got to take a train, got to take a plane, whatever. It's not necessarily ups and downs. And to do that, you do can you imagine Cinderella having multiple ups and downs, or any other classic story where you're basically manic. You're really, really happy, then you're really, really sad, then you lose everything, then you gain a kingdom, then you lose the kingdom, and then you're married, but then she dies. It's whoa, what the hell is going on? That's not a story. That's someone going insane. You want things to make sense. You have to.
We do, and I love that somebody went, oh, it's good because it's just like life. Sometimes life doesn't make sense, and you're like, man, it's not where I write or read stories. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm not trying to make it more difficult than it already is for people. That's the biggest problem. That's the number one thing that we see across the board with this new game is it's making people really unhappy, and not for story reasons. It's just another kick in the nuts after all the stuff that's been going on. People are out of work or whatever. They're I'm trying to get back to work. I'm trying to deal with everything that's going on in the world. They're tearing down statues, doing whatever crazy stuff I don't even know anymore. I just want to play a video game. And then they see somebody with a golf club beating their favorite character up. It's man, can you take it easy, please? It doesn't have to be up and down all the time. It can be, can we have a happy ending for some characters or something? I mean, I understand it's The Last of Us. I didn't understand that Ellie was literally going to be The Last of Us and then just walk into the distance after
What a title. Oh my God.
Wow.
Thanks, Neil. The greatest title ever. Yep, you are literally The Last of Us, and no one else is alive, and no one cares. It's over.
And you're like, what? So what was the point of that, Neil? And he's just, I want an answer. I want somebody to ask him. If anybody ever gets the chance to talk to Neil, please just ask him why. What was the point of all of that? Was it for us or was it for you? And if it, whatever the answer is, can you just explain it? Because I'm curious. I don't even have any feelings anymore. I'm just confused. That's the only, I don't get it.
Yeah, you see, they could have told a revenge story, and they could have, like, again, there's nothing wrong with telling a plot where you don't get what you want. It's, does it make sense at that point where you're about to grab the jewel, or you're about to get the girl, or you're about to get your dream, and whatever happens doesn't happen. If that makes sense, if it's explained why, great. That's fine. I don't care. We don't have to always have a happy ending. You don't always have to get the girl.
Right.
But just explain why. Because if you're the hero of a story and everyone loves you and you have all these girls chasing after you and you're about to get the girl and all of a sudden she runs away and you're like, why did that happen? And why don't you take another girl? Because there's all these. Is there some reason about that girl? Did the character like that girl? Is there any exposition why? Nope.
Yeah, you have to justify it somehow. Like, let me think. What's a good example? Actually, most of the ones I'm thinking are bad. Never mind.
All Game of Thrones, like, yeah, I know.
No, I was actually the one that I was thinking of was actually Divorce Invitation, which is a really like not good movie, but basically like the guy is a complete a-hole, is totally dislikable character. He has this affair with this girl, and then he finds out, like, a little bit after he starts the affair, that his wife is pregnant, and he asks for a divorce. And then he gets all of the people together, because it was in the prenup that there has to be a party to say everybody at the wedding has to come back in order for the divorce paper to be signed. Then he repents last minute, and then gets back with his wife. And it's just like, okay, so you wasted my time for the past 20 minutes. Why was I even here?
Yeah, you feel gypped. You didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
Same with The Last Jedi. That B plot with Finn. It's like, why did you go on this journey? Why are we with you? Why do we care?
Yeah, you spent this whole time, like, yeah, I guess it's your character arc to like settle down, but honestly it just seems as though you and this other girl are not very compatible, and you rushed into it because you're an idiot and didn't think to look through the Bible-sized prenup she gave you.
Well, it's funny to me that people are using they have an explanation for why they're doing something. They say, okay, this is the arc of the character, this is what the message I'm trying to get across, and all that. And just because you have that doesn't mean that you made the right choice for the audience, because it's like knowing the room when you walk into some place. And you ever have the experience where and you say a joke that to a lot of people might be funny, but just to the person that you're talking to, they don't have the same sensibilities as you, so they're just not going to laugh at it. Could be the funniest joke in the world, but they just don't like that kind of joke. They don't find that kind of humor funny. That kind of not being able to read the room, or even worse, that kind of egotism to say, oh, you just don't even get the joke. Like, no, I got the joke, it's just not funny. I understand what you're trying to do. Yes, you are meeting a certain standard for what constitutes as writing, but you completely misread what people wanted, and you made it, they had no reason to you didn't sell them on the concept, and then you didn't prove the concept through the story itself. So now you've earned like 3 times the ire, and that's your fan base, not just your audience. It's the group of people that wanted it in the first place. I am struggling to find out what going to come from this, and in regards to what his future career is going to be like. How are you going to go from all of that acclaim that you were building up basically since Uncharted 1, and how your career was going upwards, and now after The Last of Us Part 2 and all the accusations of the crunch time and the duplicity and how he treated his coworkers and the story elements from the audience, it's like he's set out on an agenda to make the people hate him. And that to me is the number one thing I don't understand. It's like there's some sort of self-destruct sequence going off.
Well, let's not speculate. Let's just keep on going and see what's happening here. Because I like this
Sure,
video. It's a good video. It's very well done, and I like what he's talking about. It's sad that the content of what he's producing is another story.
Lessons from the Screenplay only has 2 weird videos that kind of miss the mark. I feel like that I can think of is this one and the Star Wars one, the Last Jedi one.
Yeah.
For the same reasons.
Yeah, that was what we were after for the sequence.
This quiet, happy moment sets the player up for the game's darkest sequence yet.
What is your goal when creating a story, when creating a game? What experience do you want people to walk away with?
What we wanted was to have the player be entertained. I think if it's not entertaining and it's
Good,
boring,
good, very good.
stick with it.
Holy
Love
shit!
these characters
That is
the way we
that's
love them.
so fucking amazing. Because he's like, we want them to be entertained.
That's the right
and
answer.
now
He's right.
saying, but now he's saying we don't use the word fun around here.
Oh yeah, that's another.
So
yeah.
what happened? He's done a complete 180 perspective wise. That's so nuts to me, man. Okay. I think we should go back like 5 seconds if you can, because I was talking over some part of it. But this is crazy to hear.
Yeah, guys, when you know having fun does not involve a death in the family, okay?
Wow.
When creating a game, what experience do you want people to walk away with?
What we wanted was to have the player be entertained. I think if it's not entertaining and it's boring, you're not going to stick with it. Love these characters the way we love them, understand them, and just making you reflect on these choices and question, like, what would I have done? And I think you only feel the weight of that question if you experience a whole journey with these characters.
Joel and Ellie's journey is not just fun to play. It's a powerful story experience that cleverly uses the tools of its medium to deeply affect the player, making sure we won't forget our experience playing The Last of Us.
All right, that was it. The rest is just an advertisement, so we're going to stop there. I mean, I like this video. I like the stuff they were talking about, the techniques or the ideas behind cutscenes and gameplay. That's a very good argument to have when designing anything in the game. So, good video. It puts Druckmann in a very different light than what we see of him today. And that's very important because he is talented. He is dedicated. He's a very passionate man. And the only problem that I see with the production of the latest experience was the direction the story went, not necessarily how they got there with the technology. So we can talk about all the personal stuff, all the professional stuff of workers getting paid or not paid, all the speculations, but that's neither here nor there. It's not really important to what we're talking about. So, but one thing I want to talk about right now is Sensei Mike, and this rarely happens, but people come to me for suggestions or advice on their books or their stories. I'm going to read this one out in case you guys are curious. Smut, I have a question. I've been sitting on a story for about 15 years, not uncommon, and I'm not much of a writer. I'm actually in the medical field, so my writing is pretty weak. Any suggestions for ghostwriters? I really want to tell this story. Okay, ghostwriter, talk to anyone you know who's been published. Right now we have Dunn in the chat. He'd be happy to look at your story. He loves stories. Yeah. So if you want suggestions, I mean, I could look at your story as an editor. I wouldn't be a writer. I could do the writing, but that's not my thing. I would give it to Dunn. So if you want to contact Dunn or contact me, and we'll give you Dunn's information. He'll be happy to read your ideas. Dunn is amazing. He's fast. He'll take any genre and he'll play with it. I'm more of like a garnish guy. I'll look at something. I'll be like, I'll tweak this. I'll change that. I'll give you the right seasoning, and I'll make it come alive better. Maybe you might have to go into the drawing board for some characters, but the best thing to do, send me an email. go to Discord, send me a shout. I'll get you in touch with Dunn, and we'll look at your screenplay. We'll look at your script if you have any, or if you're just a bunch of pages on a screen, or a Google Doc or whatever.
Or even an outline. I actually work very well with, if you give me an outline of what you want, I can pretty much build up to each of the major points. I just need to know roughly like what you want the characters to look like, what their motivations are, and how you would like them to be, so I can fit your specifications as best as you can. You can also, my Twitter is bmalachi-dunn1.
Put that in the live chat if you can, Dunn. Or send it to me in Discord, and I'll put it in the live chat for you.
Yeah, let me pull up my Twitter real quick.
So if you want more to flesh out your ideas, to clarify them, to make them better and focused, come to me. If you want someone to ghostwrite for you, there's Upwork.com, but you don't know who you're going to get. So I recommend Dunn just because I know his writing, and he's very fast, and he doesn't bullshit around. He knows what he's doing. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Totally. Yeah, I'm happy to help you out. Thanks you for the generous super chat.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate Sensei Mike. I always want people to publish their works. I get at least once every 2-3 months, I get someone coming up to me with a script, or maybe a few pages, or 200 pages. I will read them all. I don't care what they are. I'll be happy to give my opinions. But for a ghostwriter, to someone actually get your ideas, definitely you want a writer who does this for a living. And
yes.
Dunn is the man. So. Thanks, guys. I like this stream. It was great. Thanks for recommending it there, Glib. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Glad to have.
Thank you, everybody, for showing up. That was really cool.
It was random. It was impromptu. We're having more streams later today, so don't worry. We're talking about Last of Us in the next stream, and we might have something new later on this evening. So around 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, we're gonna have another stream probably, if we can get everyone involved, or at least some people involved. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We'll see you then. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk very soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Sensei Mike, is your thing at Team Black Belt? I don't know if you're still here.
You should get in there on Discord and Twitter. And
yeah, get on Discord, get on Twitter, and say hello. We'll be happy to respond.
Alrighty.
Yeah.